And I think you said something also very important, Audrey, which is, I think it's scary because teachers want to have control. And I think it was Paul Nation who said, it's a very difficult thing for teachers to accept, but you have absolutely no control over what is learned. Yet we still feed this illusion that what is taught is what's going to be learned, right?
That's exactly one of the teacher beliefs we talked about at the beginning of our conversation, those urban legends out there. And with my work with teachers, it takes 6 months, more or less, of almost monthly courses to get rid of those teacher beliefs.
Where
and after they are quite free, but but before that they do challenge those ideas.
So here's my question to you: how do these beliefs become deeply ingrained? Like, where do you think they're coming from in your context?
They are coming from a gift forward from the past and a systemic problem in education and how teachers are seen as a profession. So in our context, for example, I've been a teacher trainer at the Master of Education. And so I have had teachers in education who were about to start their service and had those ideas like, usage-based approach. This is exactly what I want to do. And I mean, now we talked about AIM, but if you want to do usage-based, there's so many other things. You name TBLT. We also have FLIL with this film language integrated learning where you can use film. So many things you could try. And then we have a conference every year in January where they come back to the university and I see them 3-4 years after and I ask them, so how is it going? You know, all your ideas, they were very good, but it doesn't work in practice.
Oh.
And then I have this deep feeling of disappointment, like, how did I let them down somewhere? What happened is that when you start after university where you have actually a lot of information, you have this information when you don't need it. You need it later. You need this information when you have your class under control, when your class management is good, when you're not insecure anymore about how to manage a classroom of teenagers. When you have this level of insecurity, you rely a lot on your colleagues, on their expertise, on what they do. And if they tell you, well, we tried that, doesn't work, you don't do it. And you lose this idea. And then when you have your class under control, you have a new challenge, which is to keep them learning. And so the content of what you teach becomes a bit less important. We can have a very good narrative with ourselves while we don't do things. And the narrative here is, well, look, it doesn't work. I have my classroom now. They listen to me. They do what I tell them. I mastered that. So maybe I would just continue to do what has been done until now. And now I'm exaggerating a lot because there are also people want to change or drivers of change. But the system makes it difficult because they have very little time to really make that change, have the time to review their programs, create their own activities, go to schooling after their work. So if you ask me why, I would say it's something like that. I don't know if you can relate in Canada, but in the Netherlands.
Yeah. I think we've been in staff rooms, Leo, where exactly. We've been in staff rooms where there is that there's, I don't know, some, what's the word I'm looking for? There's some angst against this kind of growth mindset, right? Where, no, it's worked this way in the past. Let's just keep doing it that way. And it just hasn't worked. Yeah.
It hasn't worked.
It's even worse now in the Netherlands. It's even worse. I think we may be a bit late now if we wanted to have learners enthusiastic for languages.
Really?
Because we are now at a point where teenagers that are 18 and choose a study do not choose languages.
Wow.
So we have empty programs. Empty. It's okay. We still have 90 students. But to become a French teacher at the moment in the Netherlands, there are 4 universities who offer that program. And in our university, we have 1 enrollment. for all the north of the Netherlands.
That's
So
insane.
we pushed it so far that in high school, they think, language learning, that's boring. I didn't learn anything.
Again,
7 years long.
Again, because it's being treated like another subject. And I think that's the bane of language teaching, is that we are treating such a beautiful and powerful thing like history, chemistry, math, where you have all these rules, you need all this information in order to be able to learn those things, whereas languages are so different. And I don't think it's very different, Audrey. I don't think it's very different from here. I think Mike would agree with me. I see a lot of teachers who are still on the structure-based instruction. They rely heavily on teaching grammatical rules explicitly, using gap fills. And the difference I'm noticing is this generation of students, this generation that is coming now, they're not as receptive to this kind of learning anymore. They have evolved, but we haven't.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we have to make the shift because we are under pressure now of AI and all the tools that are very practical to translate something or use languages. And if we lose what language learning and be multilingual really is and bring to us, not only a skill, but something in our human nature of being curious of each other, I don't think it's a very good thing to do. And if we don't, also with the job of being a teacher, if we don't inspire vocation to the new generation to become teachers.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, I live in a democracy where people have to think critically, have to make their own mind, have to be inspired by teachers.
Yes.
Who they see the whole day.
That's right.
So if nobody trained does that anymore, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I think you touched on a couple things. I think you're right. They need to see themselves in the curriculum, for one. They need to see how it relates to their lives outside. And I think that's the importance of these dynamic approaches. And I think also you touched on this idea of just tolerance and being able to get along with your neighbor. Learning languages for me when I was a student was, I'm learning German or I'm learning French because I want to talk to people from those countries. I want to associate with them. I want to perhaps move there or travel there or do, right. And those are the sorts of values, in this world, this time in particular, where, we really should be encouraging and motivating students to be curious about one another and find ways to kind of, build bridges, right? And language is such a powerful tool. So if they're giving up on language, how are they building those bridges, right?
Yeah.
We have here a professor called Merel Keizer. She has a very nice research about cognitive decline and the role of language learning, second language learning in a later age. And she finds really positive effects also of having your brain learning a new language or a new instrument, but learning something new, because language learning uses many different parts of your brain, and so keeps you active in many different parts, and grow older and healthier. Also comes with continue to learn something.
I think my question for you, because I know you've also done research on communicative language teaching, and this is an area that I'm very interested in. I definitely want to bring communicative language teaching back to the forefront of language. But where do you think it all went wrong, in your opinion, Audrey?
Lack of constructive alignment.
What do you mean by that?
Constructive alignment is the fact that you have a program, a curriculum that is coherent in terms of assessment and also what you teach. And this lack of coherence have costed us, I think, the communicative approach we wanted. If you test your learners with vocabulary tests, with grammar tests, you don't teach communicatively.
Yes.
You spend time teaching them how to strategically answer a question.
Yes.
And when you have constructive alignment and you want to teach communicatively, then you have to think of communicative tasks, formative and summative tasks, so to test them, assess them. There is a PhD of Charlene Rolfé. She's from the University of Utrecht. She just had her PhD a couple of weeks ago about constructive alignment, about assessments in communicative language teaching. And she shows it very well that if you think of your assessment in a way that you want to assess communicative skill, automatically what you will provide to your learners in class is communicative teaching. So we have to rethink the way we assess things.
I know because I
Leo's
experienced
this.
Yeah. I experienced that firsthand. I was working for a very specific institution here. And of course, the curriculum was entirely structure-based. It was like week 1, they learn, adjective clauses. Week 2, they learn this. And I'm like, where's the communicative goal here? Like, why are they using all of these things? So I decided to just change the whole thing into a task-based course. So I designed tasks for each week. But of course, I couldn't change the assessment, Audrey, mind you, because the assessment was already pre-designed for that very specific course. So even though my students were communicating, they were performing, they were doing really well, they were engaged, they were motivated, they wanted to come to class, when they took the exams, they failed miserably. And I had issues with that. I had issues because they had to pass, and eventually I got in trouble. So I realized that constructive alignment in terms of curriculum is extremely important. So we have to assess the way we teach. And if you want to try to do something different, you might encounter that kind of problem. So I think that I want to ask you one more question about dynamic use. So what, based on your research, what have been some of the long-term benefits that you've found of using dynamic use-based approaches over structure-based approaches, according to the findings that you have and other researchers, of course?
According to the findings that I have, I show that there is an acceleration of the language learning development of oral skills at the beginning of the learning process. And when you take that very fast path at the beginning, you maintain this growth. What I found also is that it has a lot of beneficial effects on fluency and complexity. And if I compared it with a structure-based approach, it was very similar in terms of accuracy. So why torture our students?
Very interesting.
If you end up with the same in terms of accuracy, but that it's better in terms of fluency and complexity. So it was true for oral skills and true for written skills. And I tried to remember if I found something in terms of motivation of
I would assume that they're probably more motivated to go to a class where they're actually using the language. They're trying to, because I think this is another thing too, is when you work with dynamic usage-based approaches, when you work with task-based, I think it's a meaning is such an important thing that you forget about, like, oh, I have to memorize this grammar rule so I can say it. It's almost as if like there's no compliance to do what the teacher asks you to do. The only thing you need to do is I need to be able to express meaning in a way that is intelligible to my interlocutor. And because they have to struggle to do that, I think for some reason, language seems to, you're exercising your language skills more, your cognitive abilities a lot more than just sitting passively being lectured on when to use who, when to use that, and when to use which.
Yeah. And I told you before that I feel very much responsible also to make learning and school interesting and fun for people who are not analytical, scholar, and that because I spend a lot of time in school, right? So it has to be fun for everyone. And it's true that with those approaches, you can see that it talks to people who like PE, physical education. Yeah. Because it's a bit the same principles. If you want to learn how to play, I don't know. So my colleague Wim Gombert always used the metaphor with ping pong. How do you call it in English?
Table tennis.
Table
Table
tennis.
tennis, ping pong. Yes.
With table tennis, how do you learn that gesture to do it? And then it's not only about the gesture, it's also in the complex environment of playing with a partner, and you have to react and co-adapt, etc. It's a bit like language learning, but you don't do that by somebody tell you, so if you put your left hand this way, and then, or if you're that's another scholar that uses this, is Jan Hulstein, I think, who uses that metaphor a lot from the swimming. And that I relate a lot because my husband, he works for the Olympic swimming team. So I see them always, all those swimmers going into the pool. And I'm sure that they didn't learn by somebody telling them, so this is how you swim.
Yes.
You put your hand like this and your foot like this. Okay, now we're going to throw you in the pool. No, it's not how it works. You go in the pool and you practice slowly in the pool, in the environment. So I think language learning is more like that.
Yeah. And you make
new connections.
Because you're making connections with your body and the water. Very much you're doing with language, with form and meaning. You have to do that naturally.
Yeah. And with a lot of practice and a lot of repetition. I have to say, though, that dynamic users-based approaches is for some learners that are cognitively very, very analytical, quite a challenge. Because they don't understand right away what's going on. And some learners, they want to understand. They really would love to understand. And so for those, the role of the teacher is crucial. Because you have to reassure them that they are still learning. And now they don't understand, but they will understand later.